Hello, hello, everyone. I am so excited to be here with you today and these lovely folks that you see on the screen with me. We're here to have a fun and thoughtful conversation about an important event that we have coming up in Chicago next week. And I'm joined here with Nathan and Chris. Chris, I actually realized why don't I throw it to you and let you introduce yourself as well, and then we'll have Nathan share a little bit about who he is.
Cool. Thanks, Cassandra. So I'm Chris Johnson. I'm the current chair of the Chicago chapter of Conscious Capitalism, and I'm pretty darn excited about the upcoming event that we'll tell you more about through this conversation. But right now, it's my privilege and honor to introduce Nathan Havey. He's a filmmaker of Beyond Zero, and I'm going to turn it over to him for a little introduction, and then he's got a cool surprise right up front. Nathan.
Well, thank you very much, Chris and Cassandra. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And I, too, am looking forward to the event in Chicago next week. What is the event, if we're being coy? Well, it is the Chicago premiere of the film Beyond Zero. It's a film that has won a number of festival awards. It's being used all over the world to teach a very powerful approach for how business and sustainability can really supercharge each other. So before we get into it, what I'd love to do is I'd love to take just a moment to share the trailer for the film Beyond Zero. It helps to kind of set up what the basic story is and some of what the film has done since we finished it a couple of years ago. So if I may, I'm going to share my screen and share the trailer of Beyond Zero now.
By civilization's definition, I'm a captain of industry. By my own definition, I am a plunderer of the earth and a legal thief. Someday, people like me may be put in jail.
He said, we're going to make this company a sustainable enterprise. And there was simply silence.
I mean, Ray didn't have a clue what the roadmap was on this. He just knew that something had to be done.
No greenwashing at all. It was actually hands-on, feet on the ground. Let's figure this out.
They said, go outside, look at nature, and what can you learn?
The rest of the competitors were going, hey, we got to get on board.
I was really concerned when Ray passed away about the mission.
So my job when I came in was to really get the company back on track financially. I was probably still a climate change skeptic.
Our feeling is that we were screwed.
I had never been forced to look at the science. Humans messed up the environment by accident. Imagine what happens when we fix the environment with intent.
It just makes total business sense. I don't know how companies are going to survive in the next 20 years if they're not on this journey.
And so now the challenge for leaders is not, can we do it? The question is, are you willing to do it?
So that's the trailer for Beyond Zero, which again is going to be premiering in Chicago, or the Chicago premiere rather, on the 29th of February in partnership with the Conscious Capitalism Chicago chapter.
And so that's what a big focus of what we're going to be talking today is the Beyond Zero Chicago premiere and all of the ripple effects that is going to create for Chicago and Illinois beyond. And I also realized that in my eagerness to introduce our other folks, I had not introduced myself yet. So hello, everyone. For those that don't know me, I am Cassandra Quinn, and I am a part of Conscious Capitalism on the volunteer leadership team and a part of the Beyond Zero team and functioning in the impact partner liaison role, because it's quite a big event that we have going on, and we have some really amazing impact partners that we'll talk about in a little bit as well. But that's where I fit into that world. And if you are live with us right now, drop a note in the comment, just say hi so that we know that you're here. And if you're catching the replay, just hit replay, or not hit replay, but rather write replay so that we know that you caught it later. And also know that there is still time to be able to join us next week for the event. So if this is the first time you're hearing about it, or you've heard about it and you are just not quite on in the, what's the word I'm looking for? If you've not got your tickets yet is what I'm trying to say. There's still time. And so I'm going to drop a note in the comments right now so that you have access to be able to get your tickets. You can register either individually. You can certainly let us know if you're interested in some of the impact partner things, and we'll talk more about that later. But I want to get into the conversation. So I'm going to throw it to Chris so we can get our ball rolling.
Cool. Very happy to get this ball rolling. Thanks, Cassandra. So Nathan, when you and I first started talking about the possibility of bringing Beyond Zero to Chicago, I was kind of a little gushy about my crush on, if you can have a business personal crush on Ray Anderson, but I do. I have one. I've been following his work for a long time and am really intrigued by this movie and the message. So tell us a little bit about what prompted you to tell Ray's story, and what's your hope for the reach and impact of this story?
Sure, Chris, and you're not alone in having a business crush on Ray Anderson. There's a number of folks that use words like follower and even disciple of Ray Anderson, and he's a really unique person. But the story is so much broader than Ray, right? It's Ray kind of leading this incredible movement at Interface that, as you saw in the trailer, basically takes a company from absolutely nowhere on the environment to being recognized by the UN as one of the most sustainable companies in the world. And they did that in the space of about 25 years. And when they started, they were a global, publicly traded company. And so if they can do it, then so can every company. And that's really the impetus for why tell the story. I'd become a fan of Ray and the Interface story back in 2010. I read his book, Confessions of a Radical Industrialist. And it really had become kind of the case study that I would use in consulting for years and years to sort of show other companies what a real moonshot level of ambition can be, and how that can supercharge your employees and your other stakeholders and your profits to be able to really rise to meet the challenges that we face in the world. And so Interface remains one of the best case studies I've ever seen, but virtually nobody knows it. Some people in the green building space certainly have heard of Interface, but even those that have heard of it don't go super deep on the story. And I didn't either until I met Aaron Mizan, who was the Chief Sustainability Officer of Interface back in 2016. And when I heard what they were up to now, and then the next year, I got to meet one of the original movement leaders in Interface named Jim Hartzfeld, who's part of the Conscious Capitalism chapter in Atlanta. And he told me all this stuff that's not in Ray's books about the early years and what actually happened to get this thing started. And between the two, I saw the makings of a film. And I've not made a film before. So I decided, I'm going to try to take a shot at this. It might be totally insane, but more people need to know about this story. And so one thing led to another. And, here we are about 3.5 years after the film had its first festival premiere. And it's having premiere events all over the world. It's been a slow burn. COVID did not help in the early years, but the film really is something that's being used increasingly by business educators, business leaders, for all over the world. And so I'm very, very excited to finally, with your partnership, be able to bring the movie to Chicago.
I love it. And I know that you had shared that it's been having premieres all over the world, slow burn. Share with us, where are some of the places that it has already premiered, who has had the opportunity and privilege of being a part of this movement of this documentary and the doors that it can open?
Totally. I mean, it's more like where hasn't it at this point? So it's everything from Australia and Hong Kong and China. There's one that's being set on March 14th in Thailand. There's one on Friday for the Royal Society of Arts in London. There's been premieres in Chile and in Brazil. It's been used for years now in the curriculum of the big business school in Mexico, the Tecnológico de Monterrey. It's had premieres all over Europe, even in Russia. There's been 2 major screenings there, one of which was just a couple weeks ago. Turkey, we've got one that's being set for South Africa. It's all over the world. It's very, very exciting.
That is, oh my goodness. I honestly did not realize just the reach that it has already had. And I'm curious if you can share a little bit more about how each of those premieres had created some unique like momentum, or how each of those obviously unfold a little bit differently.
What happens a lot of times at a premiere, and this will probably be happening next week in Chicago, is folks see the film and it impacts them more than they expected. They think they're coming to see an interesting movie. What they don't expect is that in the third act, most people cry. I still do. I've seen it 100 times, and I still can't get through it that way. It is a profoundly optimistic film about climate change, which is really weird. but it leaves you feeling like, wait, no, we can do this. We can do this, and it makes sense to do this. And so it's a very inspirational thing. And so when people hear that it's being used in business schools all over the world, they immediately want all of their professor friends to see it. And when they hear that business leaders are using the film to inspire their teams, they immediately want to either show it to all the CEOs that they know, or if they themselves are a CEO, they want to know how they can bring the film in to start this kind of a conversation with their teams. And so what we've seen again and again and again as the film premieres different places is people want to show it to other people. I mean, that's how this whole thing has happened. We don't have any real ad budget on this. All of this growth has been organic, just with people seeing the film and wanting to refer. And so that's really how the thing has spread again all over the world. And it's how we've gotten into some of the opportunities that we've seen around building curriculum resources around the film to try to make it easier and easier to integrate into a variety of different business curriculums.
What strikes me is you used the word when you introduced the trailer before you showed it about a moonshot. And it sounds like your description of the reactions of those who've seen the movie and then the last act and they start to cry. It sounds like they're having a bit of a personal moment of, oh my gosh, moonshot, what's possible? Could I contribute? So tell us a little bit about what the impact has been. You've gotten opportunities and doors have opened. Can you give us some of the update on like, what's the net of the actual impact on the ground? Can you speak to that?
For sure. It's interesting. It's difficult to measure. Usually what impact is for a documentary film is eyeballs. And so they conflate, audience and people seeing it with impact. And surely for a documentary, that's the beginning. If you don't get it in front of eyeballs, then you can't possibly have any impact. But I actually don't think that's impact. I think that if you are moved to tears and totally inspired and there's no behavior change, that's not impact, that's entertainment, which is not a bad thing. But if you're going for impact, then there really does need to be something more. And so we've had a number of partners that have come up that are representing the film in different places around the world. And so the first one was a woman named Charlotte Extercat in the Netherlands. And she built a whole kind of a consulting program and package around the film. And so in the Netherlands, you can't see the film by itself. You can see it inside of a workshop that she does that really helps to put people into an environment where they're then declaring what their next steps are. And so that's what it looks like there. In a lot of the other places in Europe, there's a representative that is creating this huge database of the different groups that can help a company to really get its science-based target set for what it's actually going to be doing for climate, and to find a number of the other sort of support things that a company needs to do to get really ambitious about this. And so there, the film is the entree into the kind of supports that a company really needs to make a difference here. And then in Hong Kong, the way that the film is being represented is through a network called the Shared Value Network, which is like conscious capitalism, where they're already in a constant conversation around how business can really realize its potential in doing good and making impact in the world. And the film there is being used to help people really set more ambitious moonshots. And so do I have a metric to show the film's impact? I don't. I wish I did. I've been trying to figure out how to do that. I don't have it. But anecdotally, I've been able to attract these partners from all over the world that are really figuring out how they can use the film to advance the work that they're doing. But here in the United States, the way that we've really focused on this is we have garnered some revenues from the film, and we've invested them into creating a complementary curriculum that goes with the film so that we can make it available for educators around the country, and this is also internationally. And in addition to them screening the film, we're able to kind of collect a lot of what they're doing and also create this curriculum that's available at no cost to educators so that they can use this as a very, very rich and powerful case study in their classes. And the vision there is to really make sure that the future business leaders can be taught about the way that business and sustainability should go together. It's not a cost center. It's actually a strategic advantage if you do it in a certain way. And that's what Interface figured out. And that's what the movie advocates. And so from that perspective, the film is in use in, I don't have the actual number, but it's upwards of 300 different classrooms all around the world, again, in all those places I mentioned and many more. And it's used consistently. Once a professor starts to use it, generally they use it again and again and again. And that's, that's something. Are we done? No, we're not done. We're, in many ways, we're just getting started. But that's what we've done so far.
I love it. And I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chris. Okay. I was just going to say, as we're preparing for our own launch of the curriculum in Illinois, what should we know and what should our audiences know about that launch and how that would look as we're bringing that to Chicago and beyond in our state?
Thank you. So Illinois has the opportunity to be a real turning point. So up to now, we have sort of been giving the curriculum and the film to educators who write in asking for it. And so there really hasn't been a proactive effort to distribute the film and the materials anywhere. There was a test in San Diego County, so just a county. And there was a little bit of a test around the Phoenix metropolitan area, but there has not yet been a statewide effort to both get the materials out there, but more importantly, to begin to really build a community of educators that are interested in teaching business in this more expansive way. And so what we've done in preparation for the premiere in Chicago is we've assembled a list of between 150 and 200 educators from about 50, maybe a little shy of 50 educational institutions from across the state of Illinois. Public universities, private universities, community colleges, everybody we could find. And the Chicago chapter of Conscious Capitalism is doing a campaign to reach out to those folks and to really proactively get these materials out there and build that kind of community within the state of Illinois. And it'll be the first state in the union to do it. And part of how they're doing it is through impact partnerships with a number of companies in Illinois that are buying in to be impact partners for the premiere. And if we hit our target, then those resources and those materials are unlocked for any educator at any level statewide who wants to use them at no cost.
And I would say not if, but when we meet those goals, because we're very committed to extending the reach of this amazing film throughout the state. And there's lots of opportunities for then business and educational partnerships across the state to learn from what Ray's story is, what you brought to us from Interface. So I'm pretty darn excited about it. And I'm wondering, I'm wondering about 85 things at one time. So let me just slow my mind down. Maybe Cassandra, you have a question because I have too many knocking at my door right now.
Yeah, I'm going to riff. This is not something that we necessarily decided ahead of time that we wanted to talk about, but because I'm an educator at heart, and so I get very excited about how do we bring this into all of these different levels. I know that right now we're looking at this as a higher education curriculum. Is there opportunity, or are there ways that this is even going into like secondary education?
Absolutely. And there are many high school teachers who use this in civics, in business, and the curriculum as we've designed it is targeted at business undergrad. And so that's not that far, depending on what kind of a high school class it is. It can be used as is. It's also, there's guidance in the curriculum of sort of how to step it up to a graduate level or step it down to a secondary educator level. And it's dynamic, right? So we built the base of it, and we're still collecting new ways of doing it from other professors and other places, including just this morning, I was on the phone with a group of our fellow travelers in Europe that have built 21 additional courses in this kind of business thinking. It's not based on Beyond Zero, but it's 21 graduate level business courses that are open source. And we're very close to an arrangement where we can add all of that into the resources that we're making available for educators. And then they will make Beyond Zero and those curriculum resources available to educators in Europe. And so this is the beginning of what I think is going to be quite an extensive library of materials that will be very, very valuable for a lot of educators that want to teach business in this more expansive way.
I love it. I love it. Chris, did your thought roll back to you?
I'm collecting myself here, so we'll just go with that. I'm really curious. So undergraduate business, potentially secondary ed. I'm wondering about graduate and other kind of organizations like associations who might have a sustainability center, et cetera. What's your vision, for the university level, and what's your vision for Beyond Zero beyond? So I didn't mean that play, but it worked out.
Perfect. Yeah. So I think we've sort of said a bit about education. And here's the thing, is that for about 50 years now, business students have been taught a version of business that really made sense in the world about 50 years ago, right? It's sort of this profit first. The shareholder is supreme, and that's what business is, and that the only social purpose of business would be to increase its profits. Right. And in 1970, there was a shortage of financial capital. It really was a major imperative that business kept its eye on that ball. But if you look at where we are today, it seems that there's different balls that we need an all hands on deck approach to be able to figure out how to get this right. Right. And so there's certainly government and the nonprofit world is into this, but business is the dominant institution on the planet. And so, us trying to solve these problems without leveraging the genius of capitalism is like us fighting the problems with one or two hands tied behind our backs. And so what Beyond Zero shows us is that there is no trade-off between business really figuring out profitable solutions for people and planet, right, and making money. They really do go hand in hand. And in many cases, it's actually businesses are more profitable if they get after a higher purpose or a moonshot, as Interface did, than if they're just chasing bottom line returns. It engages people in different ways. They find that there's greater goodwill in the marketplace and from their suppliers. It's very, very important. And so for business education, Chris, we need to create the kinds of resources so that every aspect of business education can be taught in this new expansive frame. And it's actually not new. This is more or less what people were sort of thinking about in like in the post-war period, which was a great moment for prosperity in at least the United States and across Europe. But I mean, we're really returning to a lot of those kinds of principles here. And so we need to retool our business education so that that's the kind of business that we're going to be practicing in the 21st century. But similarly, it's not enough to just do that with future business leaders, we need to sort of have an opportunity to access current business leaders for them to really consider, wait a minute, there were these assumptions, but are they correct anymore? Do they still work in the modern world? And we would invite them to consider there's slightly expanded ways to think about this kind of stuff that resolve a lot of the trade-offs that they're currently struggling with. And to my mind, one of the best ways to get that information out there for the consideration of current business leaders is through association partnerships, because almost every CEO is a member of an industry association or a CEO group or a community that they're part of. And so the more that we can create these things in ways that are palatable for those audiences, that's a major strategic imperative. But I'll be honest, we're just starting on that stuff. So we're not very far down that road.
So we're just starting. So all the more reason for folks to come out and see this film, to consider participating in the workshop. There's a workshop the next day. That's right. And that workshop will be filmed, and we'll be able to share a little bit about that. Because really what I hear you saying is, Ray Anderson was a conscious capitalist before conscious capitalism was a thing. And he was really connecting his values with his mission in life in terms of interface. That's a fair assessment, yeah?
Oh, 100%, 100%. And, the conscious capitalism really focuses on having a higher purpose. And so, Ray Anderson and Interface, they had that in spades. The only way that they could make that work, though, is by having really good stakeholder orientation and a very conscious culture, right? And both of those things are two more pillars of conscious capitalism. And the last one is about conscious leadership, which is the leader understanding all the things that they don't know, or at least being open to, that there's other things that they don't know. And, there's a transformation that we don't talk about much in the movie. But before what Ray called his spear in the chest moment, he was a pretty hard-driving, really intense, goal-focused, win at all costs kind of a leader. And that's how he built Interface. I don't know that he was a particularly conscious leader. But there's a humility that comes with trying to do something that seems impossible. Really impossible, to dramatically transform the thing that you worked your whole career to build into the thing that the world needs. And how do you do that? And the answer is, I don't know. And if you can start from right there, that's the foundation of conscious leadership, and that's the whole journey. And so, there is a moment early in the film, 1994, August 31st, where Ray Anderson walks into a room full of people and gives a speech that literally changes the world. It starts with his and theirs. It eventually is the company. But before long, it is literally changing the world. And the CEOs that are leading companies that we have today are all in the position to be able to do something like that if they choose to.
Well, I just have to throw in, the adage, leaders go first, really is in play here, right? That leaders really do go first, and it starts with them. And Ray, what really struck me about him, I have listened to that same book that you read on audio twice already. I'll probably do it more. But what really stands out is he was willing to be moved and willing to not know what he didn't know so he could make his difference. And I think that is so key to what you're up to, what the movie's up to. I think what we're all up to. Yeah.
That's right. And I think the thing that's really important to distinguish about it, though, is that Ray was clear that the way forward was business. He didn't go take his money and found a nonprofit charity that was working on environmental issues. It was business that had to do it. And if business was going to do it, it had to make business sense. And so that thing of putting what the world needs and keep working it until it actually does make business sense, that's the way forward. And that's the thing that, again, we see it again and again in the film. And it is the unique case study that Beyond Zero and Interface create for the business world.
Well, and I think that's what's really exciting about having this event in Chicago next week. For those who are catching this right now or maybe later, we are having our Chicago premiere of the film on Thursday, February 29th. The film starts at 7, but we have some other events going on a little bit before that where people are going to be able to come and mingle and get to know each other a bit. And then we'll have the exclusive movie screening where we get to really hear all of these things that we're talking about today. And then also have a Q&A where Nathan is graciously joining us and will continue the conversation live in the room. And so I'm really excited about that opportunity as well. And I don't know if you get to make it to every single launch across the world. So I feel extra privileged that we get to have your presence with us. And then, as Chris mentioned, we also have the workshop the following day. Either one of you, would you mind sharing just a little bit more about who that workshop is for, as people are considering whether or not they should join us? Hopefully everyone who's listening knows that they need to be there next Thursday with us. And I know that the workshop has a specific focus. So can we talk a little bit about that? And that's on Friday morning, the next day.
That's right. And so there are specific ways you get to come to the workshop, and I'll let Chris talk about exactly what those are. But before we get there, let me just say that the workshop was born out of one of the other most frequent questions that I've gotten in screenings around the world has been, what's the roadmap for this? Like really, how do you do this the way that Interface did it? And Interface created a fantastic thing. It's called Lessons Learned. You can Google Interface Lessons Learned and it'll come right up. And it is very broad strokes about what it is that they learned. And it's very, very good. And a lot of folks have found that it's not as actionable and specific as they wished it was. And so I had the help of somebody that does this work for, I think I can say it, for the VF Corporation. And so she and I have put our heads together over a series of conversations. Me as, student of Interface and visionary, if I may, her as tactical implementation. How do we actually get this stuff done in a real company? And we've come up with sort of the 4 key steps that every company can use to really get there. And so what we're going to do in the workshop is we're going to walk the attendees through these 4 key steps. And they're going to sound somewhat familiar, but when we look at them the way that Interface did it, and we look at the way they did it, I think that there will be some really, really good moments of learning that are things that are very tangible that you can take back and get going in your company right away. And so that's really the intention for the workshop is you're inspired. Now, what are you going to do? And that's what we do on Friday morning.
I'm so excited about that. I think so often we get stuck in that moment of inspiration. And like we said at the beginning, there's just not that next step, not because there isn't necessarily a desire to, but there isn't those practical roadmaps, and being able to have something that is tangible and actionable that people can just leave that room and take back to their companies right away. I know I'm super excited for that.
And then, Chris, who gets to come on Friday morning?
Yeah, so what I can say is our impact partners are coming, and we've invited all of our corporate members. So if someone is out there, you're listening now, or you hear the replay and you're like, oh my gosh, we need this in our company, then yes, you should go to the website, beyondzeroil.org, and you can check in, register, learn a little bit more about the workshop itself. And again, the workshop is the next day from 8:30 till about 12:30, and we'll learn all these lessons together. So please come out and join us.
And just to give some more specificity too, if you're like, man, I really want to be in the room for that workshop, and you are a business leader or business owner, the way to get in that room is to become an impact partner with us. And that is going to get you into that workshop along with lots of other amazing impact partner benefits, and knowing that you're helping contribute to us being able to roll out this curriculum across the entire state of Illinois. And so there are several different levels of impact partnership. So big or small, there are plenty of ways to get involved. I'll make sure as we continue this conversation that I grab up a link for people to just have more information about that and the curriculum. But for right now, what's super easy for me to drop again is that link so that people can register and get that first level information about the event, the Thursday night event. So I love it. Where would we like to take the conversation next, Chris? Where haven't we covered, or even Nathan, are there some places that we haven't touched that we want to make sure we get to as we continue our exploration together?
I have one question. So in partnership with you, Nathan, the Chicago chapter of Conscious Capitalism has really taken to heart the the challenge to roll this out and make it accessible throughout the state, what kinds of challenges and opportunities do you think the educational and business partnership what do you see out into the future in terms of like an educational and business partnership? Because so much of there's been business for profit and then there's non-for-profit. And I'm kind of the mind, like, how do we actually come together? I know Rebecca Henderson, who's written Reimagining Capitalism, has talked a lot about integrating that. I know she's actually a supporter of your film. So I'm wondering what you see as both the challenge and opportunity for something between education and business. Can you speak to that?
Sure. Yeah. I think there are, my experience is that in just about every university, I mean, literally anywhere in the world. I mean, literally, there are business educators that really see that. I'll quote Bruno Roche, who's boy, where was he? At Oxford. He's not at Oxford anymore, but he's one of the founders of something called the economics of mutuality. And he said that the purpose of business is to find profitable solutions to people and planet, to the problems of people and planet, right? And so versus the purpose of business is to make profit, to maximize value for shareholders, right? There's kind of this more expansive view of business. And if we're going to get that right, if we're really going to be able to rise in this moment, to meet the problems of people and planet, we really need all hands, as I mentioned. And so if you look at the way that business transformation can actually happen, you have kind of this reinforcing cycle between business scholarship and business practice, where it doesn't really get into mainstream scholarship until it's been studied and sort of proven out, right? And then it doesn't sort of get into the way we teach future business leaders until it's been there as well. And then, all of those things kind of mutually reinforce. And so what we're needing right now is an accelerator. We've got some studies, right? The Firms of Endearment book that came out back in 2007 showed that companies that generally follow what became known as the conscious capitalism model have the potential to outperform their peers by 1,400% in the stock market over 15 years, right? And so we know that there's some promise here. The trouble is there hasn't been a big study like that since. There's a number of other studies that have confirmed. We're seeing a backlash to some of these ideas now, depending on the language that we use for them. But we need more scholarship. We need more case studies. We need more. And so I think that one of the great opportunities that exists for a educational partnership within the state of Illinois is that there's a really cool synergy here, where many academics are very, very excited about going and doing real meaty research like this, right? But a lot of them struggle to get access to the companies that are out there doing the great stuff. And so, Conscious Capitalism Chicago is already one of the few communities in Illinois where these companies are congregating. And so if there's a way to sort of figure out what do those companies want to prove, what are the academics interested in studying, is there some alignment there? My guess is that there would be. Companies might say, hey, we would love to be able to prove this out. Who would like to study it? And then if there are academics that want to, fantastic. Or the other way, the academic is saying, hey, I would love to be able to do this. Conscious capitalism. Do you know any companies that might be valuable cases? And you say, yes, here they are. And so, it would take a couple of years, but I think that the flywheel on that could get started. This isn't only happening in Illinois. There's a team in Texas that is going to follow the Chicago program in April. And then there's other folks in other parts of the world that are looking at trying to do this too. We're just talking about a global convening of educators and business people that are working on this kind of a model in Lisbon in June. And so it could be that we're able to really create a global network of both educators and business folks that sort of share in the vision of this is one of the things that we've got to get right if we're going to have business find profitable solutions to the problems of people and planet.
My wheels are already turning about the ways to bring more and more people into those rooms, into those conversations. And I'm glad that our event next week can hopefully be part of that accelerator and then continue beyond that. I'm curious too, are there things that you feel that people often misunderstand about the project of Beyond Zero that you would love to help people better understand?
Yes, there are at least two things that are coming to mind immediately. And so the thing that we haven't mentioned yet is that Beyond Zero is an independent film. Interface did not give one dime of funding to create the film Beyond Zero. What they did is they gave me unfettered access to their archive. Which is 600-700 hours of film or so, and it's amazing. And so I got to spend months going through that to be able to create the film, and that's how we did it. So it is totally independent. One of the things that happens, and usually it's film people that have this criticism. Students and business people rarely have this criticism, but film people look at it and they're like, "That's not the way a documentary is supposed to go." What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to have a celebrity narrator or endorser somehow so that it has some market potential. And then you're supposed to take a case and then broaden it out to show that it's a trend. But I think that makes for a preachy movie, not an interesting story. And so we definitely did not do that with Beyond Zero, which I think is the film's strength from a watchability standpoint and from a power standpoint. But from a Hollywood marketing standpoint, there's a number of folks that watch it and go, "Oh God, it's a positive story about one company. I think we call that a commercial." But it's not a commercial. It's a real film. It was actually the first showing that we had in Moscow. It was hosted by the Stockholm Institute for Economics. I think I missed a word in that name. But the first comment is this man in a thick Russian accent who says, "This is the finest corporate commercial I've ever seen." I'm like, good, and it's not a commercial. So that's one thing. So independently funded, it's an independent documentary. The second thing that I think people misunderstand about it is that it's really easy to look at the Interface story and think that it's about Ray Anderson. And that Ray Anderson is this great man that did all these wonderful things. And he is, and he did, but that's not the story. The story is all of the people, the whole ecosystem. That yes, they followed Ray, but Ray did not do this, they did, right? And so there was vision set, but it was really the engagement of all of the stakeholders and 1,000 brilliant small steps that were the thing that created this. And the danger in misunderstanding the Interface story as the Ray Anderson story is if you're working in a company that doesn't have a Ray Anderson, or if you're not a Ray Anderson, well, then what do? Boy, I wish we had a Ray Anderson. Then we could be like Interface. Untrue. Any company could be like Interface. Any leader could be a Ray Anderson. It's just a matter of figuring out what that moonshot is and then appropriately organizing the effort with a focus on both total commitment to figuring out how to get to sustainability and total commitment that it has to make business sense. And those two design principles can solve miraculous things if they're applied smartly. And that's the real lesson of the film. And so any team can do this, regardless of who's leading it. They just really, really have to get clearer on how they did it. And that's more or less how they did it.
You know, what strikes me about that is Ray was willing to be moved, and his people were willing to step in and really own it. So that kind of like spear in the chest that he experienced, they also let themselves receive that, even if they didn't want to on the front side, right? But they did, and they continue to do that. And so we're pretty excited to have some folks from Interface be joining us for the event on the 29th. And so I think the current head of sustainability will be there as well. And so we'll have a Q&A at the end, and you'll get all kinds of questions just like this. So those are really two great points. So thanks for the question, Cassandra. Thanks for the answer, Nathan. And I'm going to throw it over to Cassandra because I know she had a couple more questions.
Yeah. I think that what I appreciate you highlighting the fact that this was an independent film and that it was through the cooperation of Interface that it was able to be made, but it wasn't funded and it's not meant to be a commercial. I think that I would like to dovetail off that and say one of the things that I made sure to drop into the comments as a thank you to our impact partners. And you'll notice that Interface and Nora is a part of that. And similarly, rather than it being about them paying for us to be distributing this or bringing this to Illinois, it is that they are providing in-kind support. So they are hands on deck, caring about the work and providing volunteers, providing supplies for us to be able to have the event. So I think that that's what's really special that in my interactions so far is that there is a sense from Interface of desiring to support and be behind this, but that it truly is not about marketing and promoting themselves. So I think that that's also where people get suspicious generally of companies who may have not always been as conscious as they are striving to be and making those kind of shifts. So I'm curious, Nathan, as you're talking about going back to the conversation around educators and people who are wanting to do scholarly research, getting connected with companies that are interested in being case studies, I think that there can be that level of vulnerability that companies are not necessarily open to because of a case study could go either way, or it is not meant to be a commercial and a highlight necessarily or at all. So what are your thoughts or encouragements around helping businesses get into that space and be willing to participate in that kind of way? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And it's I liken it to the journey that an explorer would take. Right. That if you'll allow me to torture a metaphor, imagine I live in Colorado. And so I know that you all don't have much for mountains in Chicago, but go with me on this. You're standing out on the plains, and you see the mountains in the distance. And all of those different peaks that are out there, those could be different moonshot purposes, right? So for some companies, it's sustainability. It's solving climate change. For other companies, it's social justice and a number of different aspects of social justice. It could be a lot of different things. For some, the product that they're creating is itself the thing that the world needs, and that they're out there to solve a major problem. Right. I think about plastic in the oceans. There's a lot of companies that are coming up with wild innovations for how to do that kind of stuff. But you're standing back there and you're choosing which of those peaks is it going to be. And then once you choose it, the journey is long. You can't see the whole journey from standing out there. You know the direction, right? You can see the peak. But as you go, there's all kinds of stuff that you don't know lie between you and the peak. And so this leadership idea of somebody who's going to go be willing to go into unknown territory, to meet the obstacles that lie there, to find the friends along the way that are going for the same thing. It's a big deal. But the thing is, if you go and do that and you don't map your course, then the next person has the same problem. Yeah. But if you do map your course, then you make it a little bit easier for the folks coming behind you to be able to do it too. And for most of the companies that would be ready for this, they're the ones that want to make it possible, not just for them to reach that peak, but they want to make it possible to reach the peak. Period. Right. And so for them, it is actually part of what it is to be an explorer, for you to create the map, if that makes sense. Right. And so, Interface had this metaphor of Mount Sustainability. And we'll hear about this a lot in the workshop, but they actually considered that there were 7 originally and then 8 different faces of Mount Sustainability. And for Interface to actually be sustainable, they had to scale the mountain on all 8 faces. And so to say more about that, some of it is toxics. To get to no toxics, all benign chemistry. Some was energy, right? To get to no oil needed in the energy that they're doing. Some was like transportation. And then others, the eighth face that Interface identified but did not climb late in its journey, or at least late in Ray Anderson's life, was the social justice aspects around sustainability too. And so they had named it, but Interface does not have that story. They have the environmental story, and so we'll talk about that in the workshop as well. But it's that kind of a thing. And so for business leaders that know what I'm talking about, if they know, no, we're trying to get a peak. We are on a journey. It's those folks that are the ones that we need to be writing cases about. They're the ones that even if the journey ends in failure, that's still success because people will know how not to do it, and the next team will make it, right? It's stuff like that. And so another case in point, if I may, there's a great Chicago company that is called CNG, Charter Next Generation. It's headquartered in Chicago, and it has plants around the Midwest, and it's a plastic film manufacturer. And their CEO, Kathy Bullhouse, is one of these kinds of leaders. She's doing it on two things right now. One of them is trying to prove the case for how broad-based employee ownership is the future of business, how every company has got to get in the game. That this notion of profiting off of somebody for their 30 or 40-year career and funneling those profits to the absolute top of the system is something that cannot, we cannot abide that, right? That has to shift. And so she, a couple of years ago, gave ownership to all of her employee base as part of a big movement that's happening right now, led by KKR in the private equity space. But not only that, she's working on how to actually get her plastic to be sustainable. And so if you look at like, oh God, plastic, yeah. Well, 1994, oh God, carpet, yeah. And so she's on that same journey right now. But not only that, she's agreed to participate in a documentary. And that's one of the projects that I'm working on right now. And so she is absolutely in the hot seat of, oh my God, the amount of pressure, knowing that this is being documented. It's not small, but it takes a certain kind of leader to be willing to do it. And those are the kinds of leaders that, frankly, we need right now. We need those leaders to go find profitable solutions to the problems of people and planet.
I love that. And I'm so glad that like the thing that's resonating with me, and I feel like we could sit here all day and continue this conversation, but I know that we have to wrap up. But I think that the thing that really is resonating is that understanding that the commitment to doing that is not just about us reaching that goal, but making sure that others can. And so it's that willingness to try and fail, and there is no fail, right? Just learning. But that concept that, we might misstep or get it wrong, or not quite as ideally as we desire. And that is value into the world, and being willing to either way get it dialed in just right the first time, which we all hope for, right? But likely we're going to learn along the way in that journey. So I know that we do need to wrap up here, but just as a reminder for those who may be listening in, there is still opportunity to join us at the Karen Center here in Chicago next Thursday evening. There are tickets still available. There are also opportunities to still become impact partners. If you would like to help make sure that we reach our financial goal to be able to roll this out into the state of Illinois for this curriculum and making this available and free for all educators across the state. I did drop a link into the various platforms that we're streaming to right now that has information about the curriculum as well as impact partner sponsor possibilities. And so definitely check that out. Reach out to us if that is something that interests you. And otherwise, we hope that you're able to join us for the event. I am curious, again, Chris, Nathan, just as a way to wrap us up, is there anything that people should keep in mind if they're not able to join us for the event, ways that they can be involved, whether that is as an impact partner or beyond as individuals?
Yeah, I'll just say it, Chris. The thing that you need to do is get involved with Conscious Capitalism Chicago. It is the place where the community is coming together in Chicago and in the Chicagoland area more broadly. And so if you can't join us on Thursday, then get on the email list for Conscious Capitalism Chicago and join the next events that they're doing. It is the community of folks that you want to be part of.
I couldn't have said it better. So I want to say thanks, Nathan. Thanks, Cassandra, for hosting. And we hope to see all of you here next week, Thursday night, the 29th of February, 2024. And be there, be square. Join us. Thanks.
All right. And we'll wrap up there. Thank you.